So everyone. In the Parsha Dvorim, so Moshe Rabbeinu uses the word Eicha in the Haftorah of the Navi Yeshayahu, the Chazon. The Navi uses the word Eicha, and in the Megillah that Yirmiyahu Navi wrote, so it's called Megillat Eicha. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Eicha esol levadi torchachem masachem v'rivchem. How can I alone bear all of this, what you have inflicted upon the leadership of the Jewish people? Rashi says, Torchachem, so Rashi says, Malamed shoyu tarchoni. What's a tarchon? So in its most, what shall I say, minimal definition, it's a nudnik. He's always bothering you. In its full definition, Tarchan means someone that really inflicts his problems upon someone else. The psychologists call this projection. The person has their own problem, so the person projects the problem on others so that he doesn't see that the problem is him, the problem becomes somebody else. So Rashi says, for instance, we find the day after Matan Torah, the Chumash teaches us, Vayeshev Moshe lishvot, that's all. They opened the court system, and Moshe is sitting. So it says in the Torah that there was a tremendous crowd waiting for court, for all sorts of court cases. To such an extent that Yisro told him, Lo tov ma sha'ato oseh. Novel tivol, you won't be able to do it. Where did all the court cases come from the day after Matan Torah? They're living in the desert. So there's no varabayit. They all have wealth. They have mon. They have miraculous well of water. What's the what? No, the entire people are involved in waiting in line that Moshe should settle Dinei Torah with them. So that's a window into what Moshe meant tarchoni. A tarchon is not only that I project my problem on you, but I don't want that you should have or you should win. I don't want that. It's not so much anymore that I should win as it is that you should not win. I can tell you from long experience in hearing disputes between people, The main problem is that the other guy is going to win. That's the thing that galls the most. That's what makes it so personal. So Chazal say that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed for many averos. But it seems that the basic avera, which existed in Bayis Rishon as well, was Lashon Hara, was Sinas Chinam. The definition of Sinas Chinam is, I don't want you to win, no matter what. There are countless anecdotes that reinforce this idea. So Rashi himself brings, the man sees that he's about to lose the Din Torah. He hears the evidence. It's clear that the other person is correct. So he says to the judge, wait, I got 2 witnesses in Los Angeles. I'm going to bring them. Let's not decide the matter yet. Even though in the heart and mind of the person, he knows that the 2 witnesses in Los Angeles either are not going to come or they're not going to change the outcome. But that's the Sinas Chinam. Can't let it happen. What do you mean the other person would win? Chazal, therefore, that's a policy throughout the Jewish life. Chazal always said, don't go to a Din Torah. And if you go to a Din Torah, go for a pshara. A pshara is a compromise. A compromise is nobody wins, but nobody loses. Both sides lost, but both sides gained. If you go for a Din Torah, even though the Gemara says that you're entitled to it, and you're entitled to say Yikov Adin Sohor, whatever the din is, that's it. The Torah is full of Eitzot Tovot, good advice. Not a mitzvah. It's good advice. I discussed that with you regarding the Meraglim. Right? The Baruch Shalom gave Moshe good advice, but they didn't take it. Gave good advice to the daughters of Tzlovka. They took it. So good advice is never Yikov Adina Sohor. Should always go to a pshara. Always go to a compromise. So even though it's deflating to one's ego to go to a compromise, because I'm right, I'm entitled. He owes me 100,000. Why should he only take 50? The Torah gives us good advice. Because going for the full amount, so to speak, will only create masachem v'rivchem, will only create torchavchem, will only create sinat chinam and lashon hara. A famous incident that is said about many rabbis, so I don't know who to assign it to. So there was a shochet in town And the custom in the smaller towns was that they shechted 1 or 2 animals a week. It wasn't industrial shechita the way it is today. 500 a day, 1,000 a day. So if the animal turned out to be a treifa, so the butcher, the one who needed the animal, would sustain a sizable financial loss because he would have to sell the meat on the non-kosher market. And the meat on the non-kosher market is always cheaper, much cheaper for various reasons. So the shochet shechted the animal and they brought the animal to the Rav to check out whether or not it's a treifa or not, to look at the lungs and the other parts of the animal that have to be checked. And there was a problem. So it was a problem. And the Rav worked on it and they looked up but at the end of the day, he said to the shochet, he said, I'm very sorry, but this animal is a treifa, I can't help you. We're not going to market it. Shochet said, okay, good. 2 weeks later, the shochet comes to the Rav with another person, and they're having a dispute, a din Torah, on a monetary matter. And the Rav hears the dispute, and he decides against the shochet, that the shochet is going to have to pay. The shochet gets up and he curses the Rav. He's never going to pay. When it was all over, so the Rebbitzin said to the Rav, I didn't understand what happened here. When you made the animal treif, he took a sizable loss. He didn't say a word. Accepted the decision. And now, on this din Torah, the fact that you decided for the other person, he went ballistics. How did that happen? So he said, you don't understand. It's easy. And he says, you make the behemoth treif, that doesn't affect his ego. The behemoth didn't win. You paskin for the din Torah that the other person is right, that affects his ego. Can't take it that the other person should, so to speak, be more right than he is. So Rashi says, Tarchonim. That's where it starts. It develops. The Sforim say that Avodah Zorah and Gili Aroyas and Shvichas Domim all develop from Avos, from Sinas Chinam, from Lashon Hara. That's why it says Kulam Be'ovak Lashon Hara, because that's the mother of all sins, so to speak, because it affects somebody else. That's an insight into life that is borne out countless times. You ever see the people get on the bus here? So there are people that, they wouldn't get near a woman in the street. When it comes to the bus stop, everybody's going. There's no din at sneeze. There's no din, nothing is there. Because I don't want the other person to beat me. That's a revelation on life. And therefore, that's why the Moshe Rabbeinu, we use the word eicha. How does this happen? Because to Moshe, he's on a mode, he call Adam Mashal B'nei Adam, he doesn't understand it. But if you're not Moshe, you understand it very well. And that's part of the problem. And therefore, it has to be part of the solution as well. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash, Omer Rotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zaken Israel. Fichal B'Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar. I don't know if I've heard some answers go, yeah, Torah, yeah.